Peace, everybody, and welcome to the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. It's time for the college football playoff show where they basically on ESPN talk about the rankings and where everyone's ranked, and that's why we want to find out. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, I know I lost you guys for a second. But anyway, getting back to it is we just want to see where Alabama is as it's revealed and then what that means for the Crimson Tide moving forward. Also, if you guys are on here and you want to throw up any kind of questions or stuff to talk about, do that as well. Jersey Dolphins says we're coming after Georgia. I feel the same way. I just think that Georgia got away with one last year, having LSU in that fluke win that they had over Alabama, get to the SEC title game and then get embarrassed. Alabama wouldn't have been embarrassed. I don't know if they'd have beaten Georgia last year, but they might have. They were good enough to do that. And when they started to be more creative with the offense, we saw a team that was really, really tough to beat. And, they went on to take care of Auburn, and then, they dismantled Kansas State in the bowl, the Cotton Bowl. And, we're waiting right now to see where Alabama ends up coming in. I'm guessing Alabama's going to end up 8. The problem is no one ahead of them is losing. And this is the latest that this thing's ever gone, where you have this many teams that are undefeated, with Ohio State and Michigan and Georgia and Florida State and Washington, 5 teams all undefeated at the top of this. Now, you got Oregon, who might be a little bit overrated right now. You start to examine their strength of schedule. They haven't beaten but one team with a winning record. That matters. Alabama's starting to get some wins. They beat a ranked Tennessee. They beat a ranked LSU and did it with dominant second halves. So as this gets revealed and then we kind of look at it, I'm not expecting Alabama to be anywhere but in the 8th spot this week. So it'll be the second straight week that they're 8th, and then they play Kentucky on Saturday. So I don't know that that's really going to be anything that will help them a whole lot. But as they start to reveal this thing, we look ahead and go, you got to take care of business against Kentucky. You got the game against Chattanooga, and then the last game of the season against Auburn. These are games that if you lose, it's devastating, and if you win, you're supposed to. So you're not really going to pick up anything except just taking care of business and then trying to get to that game in Atlanta healthy and ready to go. And that can be a difficult task because you got to win that game down at Auburn. It's always a war, and it'll be a war. They'll be trying to win to save their season. As bad as they've been, if they win that football game, all of a sudden it gives them a lot of momentum and they've had a winning season, but you guys already know that. So Ole Miss up to number 9 in the college football playoff rankings, setting up for their game against Georgia on Saturday. We talked about Georgia, and I made fun of their schedule because it has been very soft this year. All of a sudden, though, they've got some tough games. They got Ole Miss coming to town. Last time Lane Kiffin played against one of the best teams in the country, he trolled Nick Saban and he ran his mouth and embarrassed himself. This week, he's been smart. He's kind of playing the role as underdog. Hey, no one expects us to win. We're a double-digit favorite. And, maybe that helps those guys go in and not catch Georgia's attention. So it's official that Alabama is number 8 again in the college football playoff rankings. So Alabama, no surprise at all, still number 8 in the college football playoff ranking. Throw that up there. And they're still within striking distance. And you start to look at how this thing, I guess the big question is going to be, is Georgia back to number one, or is Ohio State ahead of them? As we kind of move forward and and see how this shakes out. But if Alabama wins out, the predictors are now saying that if Washington loses to Oregon or loses a game, that a one-loss Alabama would be more valuable than a one-loss Pac-12 team. And the Pac-12 has a couple of things working against itself. Obviously, the fact that the conference is folding at the end of the year and teams are going all over the place. The problem that Alabama has is that Texas, who's now ranked number 7 again this week in the college football playoff ranking, is a team that beat Alabama. And with Oklahoma losing to Oklahoma State, you can take them out of it now. They've lost twice. So now it all comes down to Texas and what the Longhorns are able to do. Because if it comes down to the Longhorns with one loss and Alabama with one loss, and then an undefeated Florida State and an undefeated, Michigan or Ohio State, then and an undefeated Pac-12 champion, and Alabama's going to get left out. The chances of that happening are slim, but the fact that you got all of these teams that are undefeated and ahead of Alabama, all these big wins, and Alabama hasn't moved, it's becoming tough. And Joshua's saying, hey, this ranking is bullshit. Look, I know. And it feels like no matter what Alabama does on the football field, no matter who they beat, no matter what the circumstances are, they're going to be the team that the committee does their best to keep out. And that's why taking care of business and winning games, you just gotta hope that you get some help from some other places. And then I really feel like when Alabama gets Georgia again, that Alabama's going to take care of them. I really do feel that way. And I think a lot of you guys do as well. So, we're rating right now, and I think we're going to get it right now, where ESPN is going to announce the rankings. Oregon stays 6th in the rankings, which that's no surprise either. They've played a very weak schedule this year. They lost to Washington. It was a great game, but they lost. Their best win right now is against Colorado. And then there's Washington at number 5. Washington has had some struggle wins here lately. They withstood USC in a game where no one played defense, but they're ranked 5th. The good news is that one of those teams is going to lose another game because they're going to end up playing each other. So I think you eliminate one of them, I think, right? Isn't that how their conference works? Alabama's played a tough schedule. And that's a great point there. Bama has 3 top 20 wins and is not moving anywhere. So I don't know. They beat Ole Miss, they beat LSU, and then they beat Tennessee. So Florida State is undefeated. They're 4th. They've got the ACC ahead of the Pac-12. So there's still no change at all in the way that the committee has this thing ranked. So there's Michigan at 3. Michigan is going through a cheating scandal right now. I think everyone on here knows about it. They had a coach that was going and illegally, basically stealing signs from the opposition. And they're going to get punished. I can't imagine that their conference commissioner would. I just can't imagine that they would suspend Michigan or keep them out of a bowl game. I just don't think it'll happen. I mean, they may go after Jim Harbaugh, but I cannot imagine a situation where they don't let those guys play. So now we're waiting to see if Georgia, after their win over Missouri, which actually was a pretty good football game, I don't know if that tells you that Georgia is going the wrong direction or that Missouri is a good football team. But Missouri had a chance in that game, and it looks like Ohio State is still number one and Georgia's number two. So even though Ohio State isn't ranked number one in the AP or the coaches poll, the College Football Playoff Committee has them ranked number one. And that, to me, that seems awful weird. You know, you're going to move Georgia, a team that's won back-to-back national championships and has the longest winning streak in the country, to number two. Why? Like, what is that? That doesn't even make any sense to me. I mean, I get that Ohio State has some good wins, but to move them, but this team's won back-to-back national championships, including beating Ohio State last year. So there you go. You got the list, and nothing at all has changed, and we didn't think it would. So I'm going to throw this up here just to have it on the screen. But there you go. Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, and Florida State. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sorry, I thought the dog was chewing on something. That's what you got when you have your own studio. I definitely feel like got that fixed. I definitely feel like Georgia could have played a tougher schedule. And Jersey Dolphins, I know, we've talked about it. The schedule that Georgia has played this year has been crap. I mean, come on. I think we all agree on that. But at the same time, I mean, don't you have to lose to be kind of pushed out of the, of where you're ranked? And that's kind of what I'm wondering right now. And the only reason that it matters is just for Alabama. When Alabama plays them and beats them, being number one or being number two could really matter when you're trying to put together the best resume. I guess I don't want Georgia to lose. I think that you guys probably feel the same way. I mean, because you can't have that win be anything other than, hey, they just got stopped on the longest winning streak that the school's ever had, and it's the longest winning streak in the country, and Alabama did it. You want that buzz just in case. What if all these teams continue to win out that don't play each other? To make it a lot tougher. This committee is full of Big Ten directors. Look, the Michigan guy's not even there right now because he's back working on this, trying to figure out what they're going to do about their school cheating. I just don't think that the NCAA is a toothless dog. There's nothing that they're going to be able to do about this whole situation with Michigan. And I there's so much money involved in this. I just can't imagine a scenario where Michigan is kept out because of the fact that they were cheating. So, you guys tell me what you think, but I just don't see that. Well, I have a weekly ranking. If the teams that are playing better and better opponents are not moving. Yeah, great point. Great point. And I honestly, guys, I was trying to figure out, we did this last week. So we did the first week. And then I'm like, do we do another show? I mean, is it important? Like, do we do another show? Because that they're not going to change anything. And they didn't. But the reason that I did another show is because I think that it's important that we kind of just keep an eye on what the situation is here based on when things do start to change, how that's going to affect Alabama. And, being number 8 isn't the worst. I'm going to put on the screen right now the entire college football playoff compared to the AP top 25. And I don't get this at all. Georgia's number 1 in the AP, and they're number 2 in the college football playoff rankings. Ohio State's number 3 in the AP and number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. Wouldn't you think that the AP voters would kind of look at what the what the college football playoff ranking committee was saying and maybe move the the poll kind of towards that? You get past the top 3, and then you got Florida State 4, and in the AP receiving 2 number 1 votes. Washington is 5, Oregon is 6. And when you look at Oregon, let's pull up Oregon. I want to look at their schedule. They're 8-1 right now. They beat Portland, Texas Tech. That was at Texas Tech. Hawaii, which is like a minor league team. They beat Colorado. We're finding out now that win wasn't much. Dion had the guys playing pretty good football, but obviously doesn't have the talent yet. But those are all 3 very winnable games for Oregon. Let's take a look at Florida State and see if there's anything on the Florida State schedule that looks like could be trouble. Okay, they beat LSU. I think that was a great win for them. They beat Southern Miss, terrible team. Boston College, they barely beat them 31-29, but they're not that good. Clemson, another close win. Virginia Tech, not very good team. Syracuse, they're all right. They beat them. Duke's a good team to me. Wake Forest, no good. Beat up on them. Pitt, no good. They played Miami, then North Alabama, and then Florida. So 2 rivalry games. Not to say that those are like the old school matchups that you used to see, but those aren't just pencil in wins for Florida State. Michigan and Ohio State play each other, so it really doesn't matter there, right? And Penn State and Michigan play this week. So there's a chance that Penn State wins, and then all of a sudden you can change everything in this poll, right? And what if Penn State beats Michigan and then Michigan beats Ohio State? Well, that would be great for Alabama. How about Texas? Alabama lost to Texas. Here's their schedule. They got Rice. That was a win. They beat Alabama. I wish Alabama played them like maybe week 5. They beat Wyoming. They beat Baylor. They beat Kansas. They lost to Oklahoma in a shootout. They beat Houston. They beat BYU, and then they barely got past Kansas State last game in overtime. So they've got TCU, not a very good TCU team compared to last year. Iowa State that actually beat them recently, and then Texas Tech. All right, so those are 3 easy games for them. They should win. They should win out, and obviously get their rematch with. Well, I don't know who they're going. Good question. Who they're going to play after the way that Oklahoma's been. So that's what you're looking at right now, and then you got Alabama. And Alabama's got 3 games that they should win. At Kentucky, 11 a.m., Chattanooga, and then Auburn. Although Auburn's going to be tough, but this is an Auburn team that if Alabama takes care of business, they're going to win against. And that's kind of how things look right now. So you're talking about buffering. You're talking about basically no one really has that tough of a schedule of the teams that are ahead of Alabama. I don't look at anybody with a real tough schedule except Michigan and Ohio State, but they play each other, so that cancels out. So I would say right now, you want to be big Penn State fans. There's Penn State at number 10. They're not going to jump Alabama if they beat Michigan. It's just not going to happen. So they'd move up. They'd probably move up right behind Alabama. And I think that I think Georgia would move ahead of Ohio State. If that conference starts losing games, I mean, it's going to start to change stuff. But what do you guys think? Comment section. How do you feel about it? I mean, are you as worried as I am concerned that this could be a year where Alabama's left out, that the Michigan-Ohio State game comes down to undefeated teams? One of them gets in to the championship game, wins that, and then they're in. And then Florida State gets in, and then Washington gets in undefeated. And then it comes down to Texas, the Big 12, and the SEC, and having that one loss. And then trying to, basically argue that, hey, we belong in over those guys. Or do you think we're definitely in? Steven says we're definitely in. I don't know. I mean, I just don't feel like it's a slam dunk that Alabama's definitely in if they went out and all those things happen, because I just feel like even though Alabama's a better team now than Texas, that the committee will say, well, Alabama lost. They'll take the easy way out. They lost to Florida State, so they should be ahead of them. So you got to get some help. And how crazy is it to look at that top 5 and have 5 undefeated teams 9 games in? Really. And I wonder if this is something we're going to see a whole lot more of because of the transfer portal. The teams at the top are able to go and fill in a lot of the holes that they would have with transfer players. So, maybe this is like the beginning of kind of like the upper pack and the lower pack of teams, and like I said before, having an undefeated Georgia team to me is the most important thing that Alabama can have in case you get into one of these tiebreaker situations, right? Because you don't have any more ranked teams to play on the schedule. You'll play them. They'll be number 1. So you'll have 4 wins over ranked teams and then a loss to a team that was ranked. So like Lane Kiffin said, go Tigers at the end of his interview on Saturday, basically saying that they need Alabama to lose. I say go Dogs. I hope the Dogs win and they win by as many points as possible and they stay number 1 until Alabama plays them. It's a good comment here. I feel like our performances in the playoffs would be impossible to leave us out. Well, but they did it last year. And you're talking about a team that was clearly better than TCU last year, and they still left Alabama out. Well, I know TCU only had 1 loss and Alabama had 2, but both of the losses that Alabama had were like last second, lucky shit losses, I mean, the officiating in that Tennessee game was awful. And I still don't trust officiating because of that. I'm just telling you, and we've talked about it on this channel a lot, not to take anything away from Tennessee, but that didn't feel like it was officiated fairly to me. And then this year, Alabama got 1 penalty called on them in the Tennessee game. I mean, you tell me, okay? Last year, some of the worst penalties you ever saw, and this year they didn't even have a holding. What, 1 5-yard penalty, So I don't know. All I do know is that you can gamble in a lot of different ways now, and those guys aren't getting paid a whole lot, the officials. And that penalty on Kool-Aid and the one that they didn't call on the Bryce Young hits in that game were awful, plain awful, suspiciously bad. And then LSU last year, they beat Alabama. They had nothing to do with officiating. It was probably the most generic, boring play calling that you could ever see from an offensive coordinator. And look, let's talk about this year's team. The offense is opening things up. They're getting better and better each week. And you have to appreciate the job that Tommy Rees has done, to get Alabama in a situation where they're just improving. I mean, forget about like we want them to be in the college football playoff and, being ranked 8th and not picking up any steam in the top 25, winning all these games in a row. But the team's getting better. And I think that's what we're excited about. The offense making adjustments. They can respond now. When LSU scored, Alabama came back and they went down the field and scored. That is exciting. It's exciting to see the shifting that's going on. It's exciting to see the way that he's scheming receivers open, that you can't just take one guy out receiver wise and expect to beat this team, because the next guy steps up, and the receivers have done a nice job of, because there isn't a superstar of starring in particular games. That's been cool. You see Jermaine Burton one game, he's, almost 200 yards. And then the next game, it's someone else. And then the next game is someone else. So those are good things. And then let's talk about the defense. Oh, and Milroe too. Yeah. Let me put this up here. Steven, you've got some good stuff going tonight. Milroe, I've said this for weeks. I really believe that Milroe was injured. I think that Milroe was hurt. I think that he got hurt in practice, like the reports that I was being told before the Texas A&M game were true, that it was something in it where it affected him being able to run. Could it have been a leg issue? Yeah. Could it have been a broken rib? Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. No one's told me exactly what it is, but they speculated that there was an injury, and you remember the line. And I did a show on it. The line was going crazy. You don't have an Alabama game go from here to here. There was like a 4.5 point spread that went down to 1 within the span of a week. And then after that, he didn't run the football at all. So you're wondering, like, okay, well, what's going on here? And then the Tennessee game, you could see that he was starting to run the football. And then LSU was the guy that Alabama had at the beginning of the season. That's the same type of running that Milroe did last year against Arkansas. The explosiveness, once I'm out of the pocket and I got a lane, you better watch out. And it looked like LSU was going to try to make sure he didn't get any time in the pocket. They were playing deep zones to try to take away that deep pass, and all he did was run all over him, and it was great. It was great. It was one of the best performances in an Alabama LSU game in a long, long time, going back to Sean Alexander running all over him when Gene Stallings was head coach in '96. That's how far back. I've seen these games, and I know there's been some really great performances. Julio's had some awesome games. TJ Yeldon had some plays, but that 4 touchdowns, first time in the history of Alabama football, the quarterback had 4 rushing touchdowns. Think about that. How's that happen? There were years where all they did was run the football. So it's crazy. The amount of yards, the speed that Milroe had out of that RPO game and what he was able to do. And let's talk defense. Kevin Steele, is anyone complaining that Pete Golding's gone? No. Because the thing that we couldn't stand about Pete Golding was the slow adjustments. You felt like Alabama just sat back too much. Kevin Steele's been attacking. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the adjustments in the second half have kept some of the best offenses in the country at bay, where they couldn't score. Like last week, LSU, as good as they were in the first half, they got 7 points in the second half. And part of that was with with Jaden Daniels there, and then after he got hurt. But it wasn't like he got hurt and then all of a sudden they couldn't move the ball. They were moving the ball, but he threw an interception and they scored a touchdown, but they only got 7 points. They were dynamite in the first half. Tennessee, first time that they've been shut out in a half of football since they got their coach. And that was more Kevin Steele defense. How good is Ole Miss? All we hear about is this amazing Ole Miss offense and Jackson Dart and how they do this and they do that. Well, against Alabama, what they did was lay, 0 touchdowns in the second half. I think they kicked a field goal. And so you're talking about 3 dynamic offenses in a game that is basically officiated right now for the offense. And it's an offensive style of game now. Everything benefits the offense, and somehow Kevin Steele has been able to help this team flip a switch in the second half. And then you add that to this Alabama offense that is getting better and better. I mean, we're seeing different ways now that they can move the football. The best part about Milroe having not been able to run there for a while, for whatever reason it was, is that he had to stay in the pocket and throw the football to win. And the guy did it. And it wasn't always pretty. And he's burped the baby a little bit too long from time to time. He's taken the sacks. The guy's taking a pounding, and he just gets right back up and takes care of business. So Alabama has a lot of positives moving into this game against Kentucky on Saturday. The biggest thing is they just got to stay focused. Let's talk Penn State. You want to talk Penn State? Says Penn State number 9. I'll pull them up. I know they beat Maryland last week, but okay, here you go. West Virginia, Delaware, Illinois, Iowa, shut out Iowa, Northwestern, UMass. They lost 20-12 against Ohio State, which is annual for them. Indiana, close game, and then they pounded Maryland. And then now they got number 3 Michigan, and that's at home. Then at Rutgers, which honestly is not a cakewalk. They've been pretty good with Greg Schiano back there. And then at Michigan State, they've been terrible. So that's what you're looking at with Penn State. But I just can't see, even if they beat Michigan, I think that there would be a sigh of relief if Michigan loses. And I got a feeling that if Michigan loses their football game, that the punishment levied down is going to be a lot harder than if they're undefeated. And what I mean by that is it's going to take a tough, somebody tough to go in there and say, we're putting our foot down on this sign stealing scandal where you guys have gone out and you've cheated and you used, illegal ways to basically go get the signs of other teams, know what their plays are, and then use it against them. But with that said, what are you going to do? I mean, are you going to kick Michigan out as an undefeated team? See, I think if they lose to Penn State, all of a sudden it changes the amount of punishment that I could see them getting. So that, interesting as it is. Nick Saban spoke press conference yesterday. He really didn't update us much on the injury situation. I guess we're all kind of hoping that Deontay Lawson's back. He's been banged up and they'll ask him again on Wednesday. We'll cover that press conference again right here on the station, and we'll find out like what he has to say. If it's bad, he's probably not going to say a whole lot. If it's encouraging, he'll say that, or he might say, hey, they're out or they're not or whatever. But the most important thing that Alabama's got to do going into this game on Saturday is just go in focused. They just got to go in focused. Jake Coker, who does a podcast with me over at Disrupt the Media, it's called Elephant in the Room if you guys haven't checked it out. But he played quarterback for Alabama, and he's talked about what it's like to play for Nick Saban going into a week where you know that you're playing competition that you should beat, and that Nick Saban is extra hard in those practices and is picking and nitpicking details. But with that, he also played with Mark Stoops, who was the defensive coordinator at Florida State when he was there. And the thing that he keeps saying is that Kentucky isn't going to have the athletes Alabama has, but they're going to be in position, meaning that they're going to be where they're supposed to be. And if Alabama goes in there and makes mistakes, it could haunt them. So, the players seem focused. I don't get the feel of this year's Bama team, guys. I don't get the feel that they're going into this game and saying to themselves, hey, we got this. I just don't see that. This isn't one of those teams where you got to constantly be yelling rat poison to, because they're not ranked number one. They haven't been ranked number one. You know what I'm saying? Like the teams that the rat poison teams were the teams where Alabama was constantly reminding them that they can lose. These guys have lost, and then their goal is to fight and get back to where they want to be, and that's in the SEC championship game and then in the college football playoff. So you got 3 weeks to see if that happens. Then the fourth week would be the college football playoff. So anyway, that's where we are right now. It was fun hanging out with you guys tonight. Tomorrow we'll have Nick Saban's post-practice press conference. Make sure that if you're not a subscriber here, that you subscribe, share, and tell your friends about the channel. If you don't have an invitation to the best tailgate party on the quad, now you do. Roll Tide.